Good afternoon, everyone, and to you, ma'am. I am Monera Manap. Our report will be the patient's Bill of Rights. But first, I'm going to introduce my group. First, Mr. Aaron Posain, Miss Julia Andrianocus, Miss Francis May Labor, Miss Rianessa Leonor, Miss Rosmia Midtimbang, Miss Cheryl Ann Lariba Nunez, Miss Laura del Santos Jesura. They will be explained the patient's Bill of Rights.
Number 1. Rights to appropriate medical care and human treatment. Every person has a right to health and medical care corresponding to his state of health without any discrimination and within the limits of the resources, manpower, competence available for health and medical care at the relevant time. So what this means is that every person has the right to have medical care that you know if it's not if if any services are not available, he should be taken in a different place, so so his health won't be declining. So that's why everyone can basically be cured of their illness, if any, as soon as possible. Number 2, right to informed consent. The patient has a right to a clear, truthful, and substantial explanation in a manner and language understandable to the patient of all proposed procedures, whether diagnostic, preventive, curative, rehabilitative, or therapeutic, wherein the person will perform the said procedure shall provide his name and credentials to the patient, possibilities of any risk of mortality or serious side effects problems related to the patient, or probability of success and reasonable risk involved, provided that the patient will not be subjected to any procedure without his written informed consent, except in the following cases.
Number 3. Right to privacy and confidentiality. The privacy of the patients must be assured at all stages of his treatment. The patient has the right to be free from unwarranted public exposure except in the following cases. A. When his mental or physical condition is in controversy and the appropriate court in its discretion order him to submit to a physical or mental examination by a physician. B. When the public health and safety so demand. And C. When the patient waives his right in writing. Right to privacy and confidentiality implies that the nurses or the hospital staffs need to respect the rights of the patient to confidentiality, which means we, the hospital staffs, are not allowed to gossip or to talk about the patient's condition in any social media platform outside the hospital or even with your workmates. Number 4. Patient's right to information. In the course of his or her treatment and hospital care, the patient or his or her legal guardian has a right to be informed of the result of the evaluation of the nature extent to his or her disease. Any other additional or further contemplated medical treatment on surgical procedure or procedures, including any other additional medicines to be administered and their generic counterpart, including the possible complications and other pertinent facts, statistics, or studies. Rights to information also talks about the rights of the patient or their guardians to know about his or her condition, the medical treatment needed, the medicines they will be prescribed, the possible complications, the possible medical procedures, the benefits of the procedures, and all other information details that the patient or the guardians needs to know.
Number 5. The right to choose healthcare provider and facility. The patient is free to choose the healthcare provider to serve him as well as the facility, except when he is under the care of a service facility or when public health and safety so demands or when the patient expressly waives this right in writing. The patient has the right to discuss his condition with a consultant specialist at the patient's request and expense. He also has the right to seek for a second opinion and subsequent opinions, if appropriate, from another healthcare provider or practitioner. Number 6. Right to self determination. The patient has the right to avail himself or herself of any recommended diagnostic and treatment procedures. Any person of legal age and of sound mind may make an advance written directive for the physicians to administer terminal care when he or she suffers from the terminal phase of a terminal illness, provided that A. He is informed of the medical consequences of his choice. B. He released those involved in his care from any obligation relative to the consequences of his decision. C. His decision will not prejudice public health and safety. Thank you.
Number 7. Right to religious belief. The patient has the right to refuse medical treatment or procedures which may be contrary to his religious beliefs, subject to the limitations described in the preceding subsection, provided that such a right shall not be preceded or imposed by parents upon their children who have not reached the legal age in a life-threatening situation as determined by the attending physician or the medical director of the facility. Number 8. Right to medical records. The patient is entitled to a summary of his medical history and condition. He has the right to view the contents of his medical records, except psychiatric notes and other incriminatory information obtained about third parties, with the attending physician explaining contents thereof. At his expense and upon discharge of the patient, he may obtain from the healthcare institution a reproduction of the same record, whether or not he has fully settled his financial obligation with the physician or institution concerned.
Let's proceed to number 9, the right to live. So the patient has the right to leave the hospital or any other healthcare institution regardless of his physical condition, provided that first, he or she is informed of her medical consequences of her decision. So basically, alam niya ang pwedeng mangyari sa kanya dahil sa kanyang desisyon, sa kanyang paglabas. So, second, he or she released those involved in his or her care from any obligation relative to the consequences of his decision. So, from the word obligation, hindi na siya obligado ng healthcare team kapag siya ay nakalabas na. So, third, he or she, his or her decision will not prejudice public health, and safety. Let's proceed to number 10. Right to refuse participation in medical research. So, the patient has the right to be advised if the healthcare provider plans to involve him in medical research. So, like for example, may new disease na na-discover sa isang patient or person, and that medical team want that person to be their references in their research study.
Patient's right number 11. Right to correspondence and to receive visitors. The patient has the right to communicate with relatives and other persons and to receive visitors subject to reasonable limits prescribed by the rules and regulation of the healthcare institution. Number 12. Right to express grievances. The patient has the right to express complaint and grievances about the care and services received without fear of discrimination or reprisal, and to know about the disposition of such complaints. Such a systems shall afford all parties concerned with the opportunity to settle amicably all grievances.
Rights to be informed of his rights and obligation as a patient. Every person has the right to be informed of his rights and obligation as a patient. the Department of Health in coordination with healthcare providers, professional and civic groups, the media, health insurance corporations, people's organization, local governments organization shall launch and sustain a nationwide information and education campaign to make known to people their rights as patients. As declared in this act, such rights and obligations of patients shall be posted in the bulletin board conspicuously placed in a healthcare institution. It shall be the duty of healthcare institution to inform of their rights as well as of the institution rules and regulations that apply to the conduct of the patients while in the care of such institution.